Welcome back. Let's talk about this property now. And companies that operate in South Africa today need to have their transformation credentials up to scratch. This is part of the government's drive to address economic imbalance by giving opportunity to previously marginalized groups. Here to look at the state of transformation in the property sector is Vuyiswa Muchekwane, who's the CEO of South Africa's Institute of Black Property Practitioners. Michael Trahan also stays with us in this conversation. Vuyi, good morning. Give us, like just I said earlier, give us a state of where we are as far as the transformation agenda stands as matters property go.
Okay. Good morning and thank you. So, as the South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners, our position is that we are not seeing the fast rate of transformation that's required to be happening at this stage in our 22-year young democracy. 22 years later, we have a situation where less than 5% of the commercial property sector is owned and managed by black-owned companies. We have a 6 trillion rand industry. We have a government that is spending billions every year on procurement and leasing, and that is spent still on only 20 companies, of which, again, less than 5% are black-owned. We have a residential sector that is worth over 3 trillion rand, and still we are not seeing critical mass of people owning and playing in the commercial and residential property space. When I say people, I mean particularly black-owned entities.
Yes, sir. Great to be in studio with you. Two questions. What is the goal? What is the sort of the breakdown? Is it you want property sector to mirror our demographics, I'm assuming, is the first question. And the second question is, how do we get there? How do we get access? How do we get finances to the people that need it to then access the property sector?
Yes, so I think that, number one, I think that would be the absolute utopia, to have an economy that is actually representative of our demographic in this country. We have a population that's more than 80% black. We have a population that is 52% female, yet we have an economic landscape that presents a much different picture. So ideally, that would be best case. But we are saying at this point, let us at least be bold. Let private sector be bolder in their commitment to seeing transformation. Currently, according to the BBBEE requirements, private sector major listed entities like the ones in this building are required only to contribute 3% of their net profit after tax to enterprise development. And yet we speak about small businesses. How are we going to see small businesses growing if we're only contributing 3% towards small business growth? Similarly, in terms of socioeconomic development, only 1% is required. And we wonder why we have such social inequality in this country. So it is absolutely incumbent on private sector, as well as on the public sector, to make a real and meaningful commitment to transformation by moving with their money, by spending what they're saying.
Vuyi, let's talk about the law. The law is there. There seems to be a challenge with implementation, but my interest will be a very special group of people you mentioned, the women, participating about 52% in this whole conversation about ownership. Are there unique challenges that stand in the way of women accessing and owning property, and how do you address this?
I think the problems that we see on a wider scale are just further exacerbated and pronounced when it comes to women. So access to funding is a problem across the board for black property players, and even more so for female property players who historically have had less access to funding, as well as in many cases are even deemed to be less credit-worthy. So the challenges are deepened even further when it comes to women. We are seeing, even in terms of female senior leadership, if we just look at the listed sector as it stands right now, we have less than 1% of the listed sector with senior female leadership. So that needs to change. And if we don't see some real change in terms of aligning towards the national demographic, we're not going to see any transformation, and we're not going to see economic growth.
And just shifting to more the residential space, over the last 22 years, we've seen a significant growth in the black middle class, and I think it's now the black middle class is a lot bigger than the white middle class. Have we seen that translate into property ownership, or is it more of a case where black middle class is still renting properties as opposed to owning them?
Look, I mean, according to the statistics released by the Estate Agency Affairs Board, 60% of the residential sector is owned by black residential owners. So that's definitely impacted by the growth of the black middle class. However, what's interesting enough is that, again, on the commercial side of those transactions, we are not seeing black-owned real estate agencies. We're not seeing black-owned companies benefiting from the economic value chain aspect of the residential real estate sector. So once again, black people are on the consumer side, but not on the actual side where the economic transformation needs to happen. And we want to see more involvement by black players in the residential real estate sector.
Well, you're talking about access to credit. Is there room to relook at the credit scoring, especially when you're talking about not just black owners, but young black owners?
Absolutely. I think there is a whole reform that needs to happen within the financial institutions, and I speak of the commercial financial institutions as well as the development finance institutions. This idea of the measures that are currently used at this stage in terms of determining creditworthiness are just not suitable for our economic landscape and as well as historically where we come from. A person cannot be expected as a small business to arrive with a 20-year track record. Where would they have acquired that track record? A young black person starting a business or engaging in the property industry cannot be expected to have all manner of collateral and guarantees. Where would they have acquired those guarantees and collateral? So it is absolutely necessary for all the key stakeholders in the financial sector as well to come on board and demonstrate that they're online with the transformation project.
Thanks, Vuyi. We leave it there. Many thanks to Vuyiswa Mushakwane, CEO of the South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners, speaking to us about that very crucial transformation agenda. Also, many thanks to Michael Traherne, who's been my market watcher and co-host this morning.
You're hot is this hot, and you're big, this big. When you're deep is this deep, and you're busy, this busy. When you live in a place of possibility, when you're driving Africa's growth, you never stop moving forward. Standard Bank, moving forward.
In our 5th anniversary edition this October, the story of 5 years of deadlines and tears aboard Forbes Africa. Billionaire Femi Otedola's worst day, how they're likely to build a bonfire in Zimbabwe.